Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Clemens. I'm editor at large of the National Interest. I've got the privilege of serving as moderator of today's discussion. Today's session, it's a virtual roundtable hosted by AIC. And the theme, the challenge, the wrangling, galvanizing question we're dealing with is what will it take for America to secure its position as the global leader in physical AI? And physical AI, we're going to get into that, discuss why it's important. But I'll tell you, I met with NVIDIA's always have a tough time with his fantastic name, Rev Labaridian, who said that the next frontier for the American economy and the global economy, candidly, is physical AI. That the greatest wealth creation, the greatest transitions, the greatest strategic leaps in the economy are going to come from the topic that we discussed today. Before I get going today and introduce our panelists, let me share with you our run of show. Our conversation is going to be approximately an hour via webinar format. In the interest of time, we're not going to open it up for questions today. We're going to have a great question, but I like questions. So go ahead and put stuff in chat, and I will do my best to make your questions better than mine, and we can have a good interaction with our panelists here today. I would love to pose your questions to our esteemed panelists. So let me introduce our fantastic panel here. First of all, we have Alex Torrey. He is the co-founder and CEO of AIC. AIC is a software-led industrial holding company whose mission is to secure America's position as the global leader in physical AI. And before founding AIC, Alex had a very interesting life. He was founder and CEO of the Rounds, which he led to a successful exit. But even more interestingly, he previously served in the CIA and was stationed in Afghanistan as part of his service. So maybe we'll get to what the through line of all that is, Alex. I hope we do. And then we have Gad Elong. Gad is co-founder of AIC. He's chief science officer for the company, and he's also professor of operations, information, and decisions at the Wharton School. So Gad, it's great to have you. You're all still with me. David Brussel. David is vice president and he's executive director at the Manufacturing Leadership Council, a division of the National Association of Manufacturers, which has also been on the front line a lot of these questions. And then finally, Lawrence McHauser is a manufacturing engineer by background and worked with several manufacturers before joining McKinsey 15 years ago. He's now head of the London operations practice. He works with some of the world's leading manufacturers in aerospace, defense, and asset-intensive industries. I'm always interested in whether people just talk the talk of this or they walk the walk. So I'm really looking forward to Lawrence in whatever discussion he is, showing a bit of his office later, because he's got, he's ready to go physical AI because he's got it all going on in his office here. So let me just start out with you, Alex. I'd love to start out with a broad two-part question to help get things off, because we have a mix of people, some of whom come with a lot of background in this question, some of whom don't. So when we explain physical AI, we're trying to understand what physical AI means and securing America's role as the global leader in physical AI. What are the equities that matter, and how do you define and describe physical AI?
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate the time. It's really great to be here, and thank you to the panelists. Really great question. It's the right place to start. Physical AI is simply the manifestation of AI, the manifestation of intelligence. What that means is it's software that moves matter, not just data. When we talk about physical AI, we talk about things like robotics and humanoids, autonomous systems, and advanced defense hardware. And it's the next paradigm in technology, right? We are moving from your digital intelligence on a screen to the capabilities in the real world. And the reason we think this is so important is because it will be the technology that defines the balance of power for the next 100 years, right? It's very much in the way the Gretzky quote of skating to where the puck is going. And from a technology perspective, this is absolutely where things are headed.
I just would take a step further, when you kind of looking at companies you're going to bring into this and you're defining, because a lot of people, when they hear it, and I've done other discussions around it with, folks at Siemens, folks at robotics companies, one of the things they say is that our data that we need for this arena just doesn't exist yet. So how do you expect to be a leader in helping others? Because you can't do it all, but how do you expect to set the norms, the framing, to deal with some of that data deficit that's out there that I'm hearing from other real advocates of physical AI who think that they need more than they've got right now?
Yeah, it's a really exciting problem that has many ways in. Our way in is to focus on the physical side of physical AI. So what
Hmm.
that really means for us is that we're looking at the components that are at the base of the supply chain that are critical for physical AI end products. Again, like robotics and humanoids, autonomous systems, advanced defense hardware, we think of them as the most important Legos in the Lego set. Not every Lego piece is created equal, and so it's a what we refer to as the electric stack, the electronic and electromechanical original components that without them you cannot build the end product of physical AI. That is our approach. That is what we're very excited about in focusing on.
Lawrence, I'd love to bring you in here, particularly as you sit in London. And I think one of the other dimensions we just had here is love to hear how you would define physical AI. But part of this is to sort of look at what we're discussing today, securing America's role as the global leader. How does that come off to the rest of the world? So many of the big transnational companies, they're going to be movers, the Siemenses, the NVIDIAs, the others, they sprawl the world. Is there a tension between focusing on American leadership today and the nature and realities of technology and what is going to be achieved? Is it really sort of a race between, I don't know, Europe, the United States, China, India? Is that the right way to square it off, or are we missing something?
I mean, I think my perspective is there's two flavors to this conversation. There's the conversation around how do we modernize manufacturing to make it cost effective in a global economy where we have outsourced almost all of our hard at scale manufacturing to China and other parts of the
Mm,
Far East. And I think then there's a second conversation which is getting mixed up in the two, which is how do we onshore much of our armaments manufacturing in a world where the next conflict could be in the Far East and have a significant effect on our global supply chain. We are getting a flavor of that with Hormuz today. And I think they are two actually quite wildly separate questions. And I think the first one, most developed economies that manufacture are actually trying to have the same conversation. How can we preserve and enlarge our manufacturing footprint
mm.
using these physical technologies that are advancing unbelievably quickly?
Great. David, before I jump into some other
Yeah.
themes here, I would love to get your take. David?
Yeah. No, I want to go back to the data question,
Hmm.
because this is something we do a lot of research on at MLC. And the strictly speaking, data isn't the problem.
Hmm.
The data volumes are growing exponentially in manufacturing. Our research indicates that manufacturing companies are experiencing 400% increases in data volumes. The
Hmm.
issue with the data has to do with contextualization. It has to do with accessibility.
Hmm.
And most importantly, it has to do with interoperability, because our studies indicate that almost half of the respondents to one of our recent surveys indicated that integration of data from different sources within the manufacturing environment
Hmm.
is a huge constraint for them
Hmm.
to be able to leverage that data and use it effectively. So, if we're going to, address this question of is the U.S. going to be successful, the manufacturing community in the United States has to really kind of pick up the pace here, because on the one hand, um, intentions and aspirations about AI are astronomical,
Hmm.
but where we're falling short is execution.
Right.
And we really have to focus on the execution piece if we're going to be successful.
Dave, before I jump to Gad, I want to ask you a question, which is how high on the radar screen for your club of manufacturers out there? And I've known NAM and MLC for years. I knew it was Jerry Jasinowski, Jay Timmons, kind of
Yeah.
see it. And there was this period of time for decades where American manufacturing was holding on by its fingernails, trying to sort of say, hey, we're here, pay attention. It's kind of like a Dr. Seuss show. We're here, pay attention to us. It seems like things have shifted. And I'm interested as we're talking with AIC today and Alex and Gad and kind of looking at what can come on. Is this a game changer? Is physical AI a game changer from your perspective? Have we gone from a position of gasping for air in our manufacturing sector to a greater robustness?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Um, our survey research indicates that there has been a big shift. When we first started looking at this a number of years ago, a minority of companies were saying that this stuff is and I'm combining AI with digitization.
Mm,
That was a game changer. They felt it was mostly a you know you had to be in it. You had to be in the game. It was the price of entry, but they didn't necessarily see a competitive advantage coming out of it. Our latest study indicates that 61% now believe it is a game changer that is going to confer a competitive advantage to their companies. So
mm,
attitudes have definitely shifted. Um,
mm,
and the spending intentions around all forms of AI, not just
mm.
generative AI, but agentic AI and other forms of AI, are really strong.
Right.
A little over 60% of our members are indicating they're going to increase spending on AI over the next 2 years aggressively.
Hmm. Let me jump to Gad, our chief science officer. I need to tell the audience I have a little bit. I see your hand, Lawrence. I'll get back to you. But I see chief science officers, chief tech. They're my favorite people because they sort of see around the corner and they don't really, gravitational forces don't necessarily work the same way they do as, say, CEOs have got to worry about finance. You guys just got to worry about science. So I'm interested as you sort of think about this, and I'm also interested in how they frame the challenge and problem. And Ged, you've told me before that that American manufacturing doesn't have a quote unquote workforce problem because that is a big palpable issue right now, politically and economically. We talk about it all the time. It has a workflow problem, and I don't know what in the heck you mean. So tell us what that means.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. I think it's actually very much related to the discussion we just had on data. And so to some extent, let me start back from what I mean by that. You hear a lot about the fact that we need to rebuild US manufacturing around robotics, and that's the only way forward. And a lot of that is really driven by the observation that the US doesn't have the workforce to manufacture, so we need to leapfrog and move to robotics. And the numbers are to some extent supportive of that. If you look at the numbers, US manufacturing share of GDP in 1997 was 16%. Now we're getting to around 11%. It's the lowest among any major economies. And there are, of course, many causes for that, including increasing productivity in manufacturing, but of course, outshore, the things that Lawrence mentioned, offshoring, outsourcing, lean is a big part of that. But to me, at least, what I'm basically trying to say in that statement is that the deeper each loss is really not the headcount. It's what Andy Grove liked to say, the industrial commons, right? It's the tacit shop floor process knowledge, a supplier network, the relationship between R&D and manufacturing. It's exactly what you see in Shenzhen, right? When you go to Shenzhen and you say, well, I need a prototype for something, then you get the next day the prototype, and a week after that, you have the full order. Good luck finding something like that in the US at this point. And then what
You
we're
kind of
saying is,
remind, I happen to know Andy Grove years ago, and you kind of remind me of him, because part of it is he's an obsessive, compulsive, engineering can solve everything, drill down, drill down, drill down. And I have to be honest that, that's a certain breed of person and character that you may run with more than I do. I live in Washington, D.C., but I'm interested as we're talking about, new formats, new typologies, new software directions in physical AI. How many Andy Groves do you need to succeed?
so first of all, that's the best compliment I ever received. My favorite all-time favorite book is High Output Management. So I'm a huge student
Not the only the paranoid
but that's the
survive.
second after that. That's the second after that. But exactly, right? I mean, these are exactly my on my bedstand. And so I mean, going back, Steve, to your question, I mean, to some extent, that's really what we are saying. We're saying for the firm we work with, so these are original manufacturers of components, the binding constraints is actually not the machinery and it's not more people. It's actually the decision infrastructure. They already generate, and I go back to the point we're made, I mean, they generate an insane amount of data. I mean, many times 10 years, 20 years, 30 years of data, unstructured. And they don't have the workflow to actually convert it into meaningful work. And so what we're doing is actually trying to basically say, we need to develop the decision-making infrastructure to take all this unstructured data that exists in different places, most of the time trapped. And that's exactly where the use of AI, that's the use of econometrics, that's the use of causal inference, that's really where the science comes in to say we can actually, it's very hard to do it for a firm at the scale of Boeing, but the firm we work with, we can actually get them to the speed where they compete now with the manufacturer in Shenzhen with the same people. So it's really, ultimately, if we want, we're strong believers in robotics, but as a solution that will be 10 and 20 years from now, at this point, we need to make sure we arm the people we have with better decisions so they can actually be the one that develop the components that will be part of that robotic manufacturing.
So the better decisions, the data, bringing all of that in helps you get on the track to kind of do that. Like Roland Busch, the global CEO of Siemens, made a comment. I have no idea if it's true, but it's clever. It may be false, actually. And he said, robots can dance really great, but because we don't have all the data we need for physical AI, they can't box. So Alex, can you make robots box?
That's an interesting analogy, and I think for how Gad phrased it, and just to tie some of these threads together, David said manufacturing needs to pick up the pace, right? And Lawrence was talking about we need to ensure that the supply chain can scale under economic constraints long term, and that the supply chain can have the necessary degree of sovereignty in the event of conflict, right? So when we kind of to refocus on that, and what we are looking to do at AIC is to empower the capacity that exists here at home today. Right. And it's this idea of we are betting on American manufacturers. We are betting on the ingenuity that exists on the production line, the genius that is there around designing these original components, but acknowledging that they are starved for modern software. And the way that we approach our software, the way that we tailor our software is very much about modernizing the decision-making infrastructure. So that simply means being able to make better, faster decisions on the shop floor to empower. Think of it as it's the Iron Man suit for the operator to still be they're running the show, they're on the production line, but they now have significantly more capability at their fingertips to make better, faster decisions. And we think that can unlock significant capacity. So it's a matter of sequencing is what is important here, right? And what do we need to solve this problem near term in the next 2 years, right? And then that is a building block to then allow us to expand the tools in our toolbox for the medium term, and then ultimately, longer term and automation and everything else. But it's more about using what we currently have to unlock the capacity that already exists, and that allows us. We support the people that are making the components to build the robots, and there are other great companies that will teach those robots to dance and box. But before you can teach the robot to dance or box, you need to be able to build the robot itself, and that's what we are looking to focus on.
Lawrence, I'd love to jump to you. You had your hand up, number one. Number two, I want you to kind of give everybody a very brief glimpse of your cool office and all your little gadgets. But three, I kind of want to hear a little bit about. I know you're an economic and corporate strategist. You help CEOs get over the hump of whatever biases they have. Okay, how can they think about strategic leaps in their industries? And this is not easy what we're talking about. We're making it sound easy. Alex, you're very seductive in the way you talk about this. But I'm interested in what corporate world, but corporate American. We'll get, of course, to David as well. What lingo do you need? How are they hearing this moment? They may be excited or they may be anxious, but I'm interested in, the kind of introspective, deep thought parts of jumping ahead in physical AI. And is it a heavy lift for you or is it a light lift?
Okay, there's a lot there. So the easiest thing first is you can take a look at my at all my engineering clobber here, this is my tiny CNC, which is about to get upgraded. If there are any people joined who actually run real CNC shops, that's like a Fisher Price.
I've never seen a McKinsey consultant who had real stuff on their desk. So this is
Yeah,
a
which then leads me on
historic
to the
moment.
next question, right? So yeah, McKinsey as an institution do a lot of that strategy stuff you discussed, Steve. I spend my
Yeah,
time in massive companies talking to COOs about
yeah,
how they can dramatically improve their productivity of their manufacturing.
right.
AI is absolutely the word at the moment. Everyone is very excited about it. I organizations, especially in the physical world and in manufacturing, are starting to realize the shortcomings of their processes.
Hmm.
And so I forget which somebody went on the news recently and said we need to do lean before we can do AI. And I think in the next 18 months, people are going to start to realize this. And I think AI at the moment is being used as a tool, like a hammer for
Hmm.
a person. So this is why it's integrating so quickly in software. So a friend of mine works for a hedge fund. He's a very successful developer. He's moved jobs. He used to have a team of 30 software developers. He now has zero, and he
Hmm.
just runs Claude Code all day, right? And that's great, and you can implement that really fast because software developers use Claude Code as an example as a tool. They don't use it as a system. And I think
Hmm.
what now is happening is everyone's got very excited about that. And people want to see how we can apply this incredible technology to manufacturing. And then suddenly you can't just give an AI agent to somebody as a tool. You have to build it around a system. And that
Hmm.
brings back to what David said sort of 8 minutes ago on this data point. And I completely um, observe what David is describing. The data manufacturing companies have got now has increased 400% probably over the
Hmm.
last year or the last 10 years. Often that 400% is garbage, right? It's not the information you need. And
Hmm.
I think, you look at ERP systems and it will give you anything you want, all manner of information about when something was shipped and when it was clicked and when it was approved in quality. My clients want to know why their equipment keeps breaking. They don't know why it keeps breaking or what breaks. And none of that information is available. Right? That's a different computer system. And I think winding back, I think if I was to do a soundbite, it would be manufacturing and operations for too long has given the decision rights over what data will be captured to computer scientists when they
Hmm.
build ERP systems, and manufacturing engineers have not had the same level of decision rights and in some ways have been hollowed out. And we will now have to play catch up if we actually want to start doing physical AI, because it's that data that the manufacturing engineers understand that is going to need to be created that will then be used by LLMs and equivalent in the physical AI to make the right decisions that are not being made.
So fascinating to hear like some of the power relationships between these different clusters of talent are shifting and changing very rapidly. That's what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah,
If
say
I
that.
could,
Go ahead, David.
yeah, if I could jump in, we also have a very old problem, but it continues to persist around legacy systems
Hmm.
and disparate systems. My members here at MLC, on average, probably have 8 to 10 ERP systems.
Hmm.
They have many more supply chain systems, CRM systems, PLM systems. So, and they're dealing with equipment sometimes on the plant floor that's 30 years old or more, with PLCs and distributed control systems that are also disparate and aged.
Hmm.
So we have to address that issue if we're going to get to the point where we're going to be able to really use the new technologies for advantage. And companies are working on this. It's a hard problem to solve. It's been a problem as long as I've been in manufacturing, frankly.
Hmm.
Um, so, and I think one of the roots of the problem is the way technology was bought.
Huh.
divisions, departments bought what they thought was best for them, often not attached to an architectural strategy. And that architectural strategy is absolutely critical if we're going to rationalize the systems going forward. We have to, more companies have to coalesce around that sort of thing. We're seeing movement there, but again, particularly in the large companies, it's a hard problem.
I mean, Gad, I see your hand up. Would love to bring you in on that. But as we're also kind of thinking about data and the data dimension of this, I think one of the questions, just listening to the balkanized world of the shop floor systems that I just heard from David, et cetera, is one of the things that's been in my mind, and this is an honest question, I really don't know the answers. When you look at LLM model, investment, it's staggering the level of cost that's going into that. So when I sit and look at and talk to CEOs from around the world that are part of that game, they say, some of them wonder if they'll ever see an ROI. But in industrial AI, in physical AI, in robotics and AI, is the cost up front the same, or is this something where you're going to get a second mover advantage that other people are going to be able to adapt and move? Because when I look at the cost that a Meta, a Google, OpenAI, or this is not something manufacturing companies can front. But I'm just interested, Gad, your thoughts.
I think we're using the term data and conflating multiple types of data here in a way that I think is fair. So first of all,
I'm sure I am.
Not only you, everybody. So let me try to clarify one thing that's important. When people, I think I want to start where you started initially, where the point was that if you speak with NVIDIA and firms like that, they claim that we don't have enough data. And what they mean is that if you want to actually have industrial robots that can actually behave like humans, the reason Lawrence's friend has so many developers, can fire all of these developers, is that every line of code ever written is documented. So when we train LLMs to do that, there is not a single line of code ever written that we don't know how it behaves and we can test it. In physical environments, we don't have it. If you look at what firms like Pi, which is probably the most advanced firm, physical intelligence, what they do is they basically are trying to develop LLM-like models, foundation models for robotics, by basically taking videos of how humans behave. Now, the reason we don't think, if I take it back for a second to why we don't think that at this point robotics is the solution for most of these firms, is that it will take us probably a significant amount of time to develop these models will be in with the precision we need to be able to actually involve them in our physical day-to-day reality. I have a student that developed a dog that can follow you to the office. That's going to be great. But if you want this dog to do anything beyond simple barking, probably it will not be able to do that if you want it to actually be useful. So we really have to develop the data to actually do the physical things that all of us do. But now we get to the second question, which I thought was the second part of this question, which is the fragmentation of the data and how expensive will it be to use AI. And here, let me disagree with both Lawrence and David. And I think if everything changed in code writing, even for manufacturers, in December 2025, the world completely changed. At this point, give me 8 ERPs, and I'll say, where's the 9th one? Because fragmentation of data and a data that is disparate and sits on different, we worked with a firm that we came there and they said, we don't have any data. We said, we have 10 years worth of paper travelers. We can actually come now and bring, and then within 48 hours, we had an hypothesis we can double their capacity. Within 6 weeks, we claimed to double their capacity. In fact, we realized we tripled their capacity. And again, most of the things were in paper. We scanned it, brought it. I mean, so the revolution we're in the middle of, which I think is going to impact manufacturers, is that code writing became simpler. Unstructured data is not a barrier anymore. And the willingness to spend, as all of you indicate, is at its peak probably before you realize that there is a little bit, it's a little bit, there is going to be the reality that doesn't maybe bring the benefit we thought, but still going to be more beneficial. So I think the point here is manufacturers are going to be more reluctant to spend it on actual physical AI, but the AI in the back end to actually power, which will ultimately become physical AI, is built these days exactly for that. Smaller firms first, larger firms later, not because of complexity of data, by the way, primarily because of inertia. Large firms are just extremely inertic in how they make decisions.
Interesting. Alex, I want to kind of come back to you because let's just be honest, you're a conglomerate. You've got like, they identify AIC as a holding company, but a holding company holds a lot of different things. And a part of your model, as I understand it, is, figure out how you turbocharge productivity into these manufacturing pods or assets in a country, really bring them back to life, if you will, make them relevant again, put them on the front line. I'd love you if you can, and we didn't, pre-play this. So I'd love to hear, real stories of how you've done that, number one. And number two, how ripe an opportunity is it throughout the United States, maybe throughout Europe and other places, as we've got a kind of transnational panel here. But, what kinds of real opportunities are out there for you to kind of, just shake up the productivity element with these AI tools that you've got?
Great question, Steve. It's the most exciting opportunity I can think of, right? And the Gag gave the example. I can expand on real firm. We contextualized the data, a topic that was already shared by the panelists, so we can make sense of structured and unstructured, official and unofficial data in a way that is really only possible because it is July 2026 and the advanced capabilities that our team has to do that in very short order, and can point to real throughput on real factory floors, driving real productivity in matter of weeks, not months or years, right? Without saying, we need, significant CapEx to realize that. And to, back to the holding company, another theme that was talked about is the 8 ERPs. What we do not need is another SaaS company trying to sell, another software product to, to solve a very specific pain point, right? To be the I'm a hammer and so everything is a nail. And so that's what led us to be a holding company. We are very much, we consider ourselves at AIC software industrialists, right? We are building a software platform. But what we saw was that to execute the thesis and to be able to touch on, I'll touch on it in a second, to be able to very much focus on the base layer of the supply chain, which we think is the most important, that the right mechanism to do that is via acquisition. It's being able to acquire these incredibly important parts of the supply chain and being able to install our proprietary software. Again, we measure progress in days and weeks, not in months and years, and unlock the capacity that exists today. It is trapped inside of the four walls of these businesses because the world has shifted, right? Because they have infrastructure, they have legacy systems that were built for a world that doesn't exist anymore, and the ability to come in and modernize that decision-making infrastructure is what is so critical. And to round this out, then, Steve, the focus for us in this holding company, you used the word conglomerate, is we're very strategic and selective in the companies that we bring in. Again, they own the design and do the precision manufacturing for the most important Legos in the Lego set. And it's at the base of the supply chain, right? You get a lot of credit at the top, right? And, Jeff Bezos getting in the game with Prometheus. There's a lot of attention being placed on the aggregators, the primes, the OEMs. But the reality is that the top of the supply chain can only move as fast as the slowest component manufacturer, right? Because these are critical parts for the end product. And we are committed to partnering with these great American businesses to be able to support them, unlock the trapped capacity, and level up their productivity to meet the demand, not just for the next 2, 3, 4 years, but for the next 2, 3, 4 decades.
How relevant is the work you're doing and how involved you may be in the sort of defense parts of the supply chain? Because, I've been talking to defense industrial base people and, Department of Defense, now DOW people, make everybody happy, for decades. And honestly, up until you began seeing Ukraine synthesize intelligence on the battlefield and create very different capacities, You sit down with combatant commanders in the United States in a private off the record Milano dinner, and they'll say, you know what, we can't do what they're doing. And there's a lethargy, a slowness, a kind of blobbishness that has been characteristic of a lot of the American exquisite system process. And I want to be careful of being overcritical, because there may be people here who maybe see it differently, but I'm overstating for effect. But what I have seen in companies like yours, and I've seen other companies recently from critical materials companies or makers of drones, or these kind of unmanned subs and things like this, a rapid change. And I just would love to get of our audience an understanding, one, how you see that, and two, are we seeing right now, without even being necessarily conscious of it, a dramatic change in our industrial base when it comes to defense stuff?
It's, I think, the most exciting window of opportunity we've seen in a very long time as it relates to the energy that is around this concept of the defense industrial base, right? And I started my career in the intelligence community, right? I served in Afghanistan. I have tremendous appreciation for what it means to be able to have the capabilities to have military superiority, and how deterrence and everything that comes downstream from that, and that superiority is anchored in the industrial base, right? So we at AIC, as a holding company, we're dual use, right? We support components that are in outer space, literally, Mars rovers. We support components in industry, in oil and gas, in energy, in critical parts of the economy, and we support components that are used for advanced defense hardware. So it's really understanding the application of physical AI across the most important sectors of the economy. But for me personally, there is again tremendous appreciation on the side of what the military is able to do and what the military will need to do to continue to have deterrence, ultimately to avoid conflict, but in the event of conflict, to have supply chain sovereignty so that the U.S. can execute its strategy.
Terrific. Thanks, Gad.
Yeah, so to me at least, the way I think about it is that the U.S. doesn't have to out-manufacture China, but it has to outmaneuver its dependency on China when it comes to several categories. And to me, it's broader, as Alex said, I mean, we were thinking about that broader than aerospace and defense, but aerospace and defense is the place to start with that. Just to give you a little bit of numbers, China's manufacturing at this point is $5 trillion per year. It's slightly more than that, 7 times that of what it was in 2004. The US is nowhere close to that. The US semiconductors fab share is 37% 1990, nowadays 12%. Shipyard capabilities, 200x what the US can actually do. And the point here is that the US at this point, and that goes back to Lawrence's point from before, it created a whole dependency on China for almost everything, that when it actually needs these capabilities, it doesn't have it. So here, I think we have to look at, I think probably the best example of a successful initiative of this type is to look at what Korea did. There's a great paper by Nathan Lane from Oxford from last year on how Korea was a backwater, essentially, I mean, without offending anyone, in the 60s, and became what we like to call the miracle in the 80s. And a lot of that was by choosing 6 industries. And in these 6 industries, over-investing, creating a little bit of protectionist view of saying we're going to protect it, but over-investing massively in R&D, capital, and the implications were actually quite interesting. And there are 2 important implications. One was there were propagation effects beyond just these industries. So you saw immense benefits beyond these.
Right.
But the second thing, which is really important, which is the fact that the industry that benefited the most are the industries where there is significant learning by doing. Where actually seeding that capability, because that's what the US lost. The US lost the capability to do that fast enough and cheap enough, going back to your point about exquisite, in a way that, if you go back to World War II, the US won World War II, not because of military, because of supply chain. It's a supply chain story more than a military story.
Right.
I mean, no other country could outproduce. Right. And so we are never going to go back to that scale, but we need to ask ourselves, how do we actually regain?
Become more nimble, get more nimble.
Reduce dependencies, exactly.
Great. Dave, let me come to you. So you and I kind of play in the Washington scene a lot, and I think you manage it better than I do. But I'm sort of interested in the kind of broad questions about your members is this, and I've always asked this question with big transitions and issues. Is gravity going to take us to a physical AI world no matter what happens? Like, is this all easy? I mean, is it easy in a sense that the shift is going on, Washington can't screw it up, or Washington could help it? Washington sometimes is so narcissistic, it thinks it's the center of everything here. But I am interested into the degree to which things have to happen or things have to not happen to get the physical AI jump for your members that we're talking about.
Well, it's not easy, but from what we can tell from our research, and I think I mentioned this before, is that the intentions and aspirations around doing this are very, very strong. And I think it's coming from two directions at once, because we touched on this a little bit earlier. Corporate boards, CEOs, executive suites are under pressure in every manufacturing company to use AI to their advantage. I can't have a conversation today with any executive in a manufacturing company where it doesn't turn almost immediately to AI. At the same time, the people at on the plant floor are bringing AI in, and they're experimenting with it. They're using it as much as they can. Our research indicates, though, that governance is a big gap in this equation. Only 35% say they have a formal AI governance strategy in place in their manufacturing companies. But so these two pressure points happening at the same time, I think, is putting a lot of momentum behind doing this. And there's going to be a whole period of figuring out how to do this, how to execute very well going forward. The big issue, what we talk about here at MLC all the time, is how best to organize around the opportunity. Governance is a piece of it. AI skill training is lagging tremendously in manufacturing companies. Very few companies are putting the money into training. We have to change that equation to move it forward. We've got to deal with that data issue.
Right.
One of our members is SESME, the Smart Manufacturing Institute. They recently published a application programming interface called i3X. I don't know if you're all familiar with that.
Not at all.
Yeah, it's an interface to create interoperability in data. Basically put.
Interesting.
And we're promoting this very, very strongly to deal with the interoperability issue, because it's central to the whole thing. If we don't overcome that one, we're not going to really make a lot of progress. We're actually doing a workshop with SESME in August on this. We have now almost 1,000 registrants for this workshop.
Wow, anticipate. Excellent. Lawrence, I love how CEOs about practical ways in which they could change their production line using these new tools and methodologies coming in. It kind of links what David said, I think, to that very well. And I think one of the questions that I've talked to a lot of CEOs recently, very sort of substantial executives with substantial firms, multi-billion-dollar firms. And they said they're tired of the meta AI topics, AI and jobs, or AI this. What they want is a little bit of what I just heard from David, or a little bit what I just heard from you. Practical, almost show and tell, a kind of let us understand how, it's coming in the shop floor, or what went well, or, your governance issue that you just discussed, David. But from a McKinsey-esque approach, I'm interested in, Lawrence, as you're kind of talking to them, are they finding enough, I don't know if it's HBR stuff or what, but is there a kind of brokerage or clearinghouse for applicability, lessons learned, best practices in this space?
No, there really isn't. I think I think we're going to see a shift in the next few years. I think at the moment, everyone is talking around the pure generative models, if that's the right expression, like Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini. And they're sort of throwing these at their organization. And it's actually unrelated to my work. It's my friend's fiance works for a large company, and they do to try and encourage the workforce to use AI. They get people up every Friday to tell everyone, oh, this is how I've used AI. And they had somebody recently, and my friend's a computer scientist and she's a neurophysicist, so they're of high intellectual stock. And somebody went up with a straight face and said, I've implemented AI and it's gone so well, I now just get Cursor to reply to my emails and I don't need to do anything. Which, of course, then begs the question, if you can replace yourself with an incredibly simplistic agent, what that means is the person in that business workflow is not adding any value now and was probably never adding any value before, which connects to my bigger point, which is a sort of a theme that I'm seeing is I think the next thing that's going to have to happen is not the models. I think they're going to become quite commoditized. It's how do you stitch those into business processes to make them effective? And nobody can do that very easily. And the reason they can't do it very easily is because most business processes are broken and rely on tribal knowledge in an organization. And my tagline is most of the CEOs are going to enthusiastically try to implement AI from 2025 and are going to realize what's preventing them from doing it is not having robust processes from management theory circa 1990. And so I think we're going to go through this like Back to the Future type vibe with fewer DeLoreans, which makes it sadder.
It's so interesting. I want to come to Alex and Gad, but I'm going to ask you to go very short form because we're getting up near our limit here. But imagine that Steve Clemens had a company. I want to make copper great again. I've gone out to get into the copper mining business. I'm part of this. Some part of the critical materials element there. I've got over my permitting and all this stuff. If you were to acquire me, if you were going to come and acquire me, what would your software do to me? Show us under the hood a little bit about what you're doing to a company like mine if you came in and acquired it. Gad?
Yeah, that was exactly what I wanted to answer or respond to Lauren's point, because I think to some extent what we do is, I'm a student of Lean and TQM and Six Sigma. But all of these are, in my opinion, not a good fit for the era that we're in. Most of them look at the flow and things that are very relevant still, but are just not really at the forefront of where data is really there. And so we develop a new concept which we call decision physics. And Alex spoke before about decision-making infrastructure. We asked ourselves, how do we make sure that people that make decisions, a decision can be the operator on the shop floor, can be the COO, can be anywhere in the middle, have the best ability to use these tools to make better decisions. We focus really about three things. We say usually they don't make the right decisions because they don't have the right information. So how do we make sure we bring the right information to them in real time? Second, how do we make sure they understand the consequence of their decisions? To give an example of a firm not doing that is that the fact that we have Micron so expensive now is people do not understand the implication of their decisions a few years ago. And the third, we bear the consequences of our mistakes and our decisions. So what we are basically saying, if you can actually take these three ideas of making sure that the right person have the right information, they can actually visualize where things are going and learn very quickly from every single decision, we're going to make sure there is a much better decision-making infrastructure within the firm to make every decision, from workforce to inventory to when do I launch a product, when do I kill one, how do I price and quote. And once we do that, everything becomes a whole.
And it's easy. It's easier when you're the owner, right? Because then you're not going to run into non-compliant founders.
And you bear the consequence of your decision. We build a better system. We make money from that. We didn't make a better system. We lose. It's not we earn any proceeds from them just using it. Doesn't exist.
Alex, did you want to add to that?
I think Gad covered it. Lauren, looks like Lawrence has a question, and then maybe see if I can jump in at the end.
Go ahead, Lawrence.
It's not even a question. It's to just like high five Gad and Alex. I believe you to be absolutely right. Like, so yesterday in America, I was talking to a client who make trucks. They don't make trucks, but I'm protecting their identity. And they make them to order. And they showed me one truck that was half finished. They go, "We've been making this one for 6 years. We're really good at doing it. It takes us 2,000 man hours to build." I was like, brilliant. They pointed at another one and they said, "This is basically the same truck, but they had tailored it to the customer requirements." And the customer had been like, "Oh, could we have this thing made out? Could that be blue? And could we make this bit out of plastic?" And the salesperson says, you can guess what they said. They said yes. All right, and they said this one is going to take 20,000 hours when we finish it. 20,000 hours. They were both trucks. They were both diesel trucks, basically, with variations, and it 20,000 hours. And in no way did the salesperson making those decisions have that understanding to go, this is going to take us 10 times longer to build.
Mm-hmm.
And this is these decisions, point one. Point two, once you get into manufacturing, I believe, to Gad and Alex's point, it's all about planning. The stuff America makes today has thousands of bits. Thousands of bits are a nightmare because all you need to do is not have one bit and you can't make the thing. Like, and helping organizations manage that, they call it clearance to build, would, in my view, would be, at least in the assembly environment, the single biggest lever you can pull. And I have many clients who make complicated things, who have warehouses full of half-finished things because they realized they didn't have this bolt or that pump, which is not manufacturing is not complex, it's complicated. You've got to do 10,000 easy things all correctly. And it is AI will help people make those correct decisions. That is the transformation that I think is going to happen.
Just as we wrap up in the next few minutes, I'm going to go to Alex at the end. But Lawrence, give me just 20 seconds when you kind of look over the next 6 months to some physical, palpable, big leap or big failure in the physical AI world. Because I want to put a little time urgency into this. What do you expect to see?
So if it's in 6 months, people are going to realize the LLMs from the kind of OEM LLM providers are a waste of time once you get into complex systems. And people are going to realize that planning is where it's at in the short term, because that's non-physical, although we're talking about physical AI. And that is the part where AI can have the biggest impact the most quickly. And I really hope they then realize that most Western manufacturing businesses are operating in about 20% of their true capacity.
I love bold provocations, and that's the bold provocation. Dave Broussel.
I'm hearing over and over from my members that their data is not ready for AI. I'm hearing it all the time. So I'm hoping that over the next year or so that we address this problem and solve this problem and really better organize around the AI opportunity. And not only it affects not only data, but it affects governance. It affects who's in charge. Our studies indicate that authority over AI is widely diffused in manufacturing companies. Some people say it's the IT guy. Some people say it's the CTO. Other people say it's the business unit head. There's no real consensus over who should be and who is in charge. So that's what I'm hoping the most within manufacturing itself. On a much higher level, I do have one more comment, Steve, if I can.
Yeah.
I'm hoping at a public level that here in the U.S. we get away from this black and white narrative about AI. That AI is apocalyptic, or it's the next holy grail. It's really somewhere in the middle. I think all the surveys we've seen about the public being concerned and the backlash against data centers and all of the negative feelings in the public about this new technology is a result of a lot of the polarization.
Right. I am super excited myself about AI, and I'm with you very much. Gad, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I think to me at least the main prediction that I have is that ultimately we'll realize within the next few months, related very much to Lawrence and David's point, that the main issue is not data, It's not it's actually decision latency. It's the fact that we became just too slow in how we make decisions and how we think about problems. That's related to AI, to data centers, almost everything we discuss now. We need to rethink things faster. We need to empower people to think faster. We need to actually give them the ability, the system to think faster. That will unlock significant growth, significant capacity, significant ability to build new capabilities.
Alex, I love these kinds of discussions. I could do them all day. We could do them once a week if you want for the next year. Really appreciate you letting us kind of open our, aperture a little bit, kind of see what we could do and to hear a little bit about the AI story. But I want to give the last word to you, just in terms of, how you think you've got a, group of people listening right now. What ought to be, I don't want to create work here, but I do want to say, what's our kind of social contract that you want to see people do as we're kind of approaching the future from an economic perspective? And I appreciated what David said about the political side, because I think that's a very important part of the dimension. But I want to give the last thoughts to you, Alex.
Thank you, Steve. So to kind of circle back to a point that Lawrence just made on, calling it, the 1,000 bits a nightmare. For us, the 1,000 bits is a dream, right? It's really the ability to apply software to simplify that complexity, right? To be able to then get the manufacturing base that we all know is critical over this hump and positioned well for the future, right? And we see the best manufacturers operating at 90+% utilization. And the reality is that the smaller, the independent, founder-led, owner-operated operate below 50, right? Lawrence had 20% capacity. So the opportunity is there. It is trapped. It is ready for us today to be able to modernize that decision-making infrastructure to get to the future. And why does this matter? We have to come back to the importance of ensuring that America is the global leader in physical AI and all of the implications that are downstream from that. And to really understand the geopolitics and the macro picture going forward will be that balance of power, that the world order will be determined by the ability for the U.S. and its allies to be able to produce this most important technology that is physical AI, and this is an all hands on deck. We need engineers, software engineers, hardware engineers. It's really very much an all hands on deck moment, but the opportunity is there, right? The window is open. It won't be open forever, but today that window is open. It is extremely exciting to be building in the epicenter.
Well, terrific conversation. This conversation, I enjoy doing these online sessions. So I hope I can invite all of you back into different things. I want to thank AIC for hosting us. If I could ask everybody to give a round of applause, I would if we were in a big hall, for Alex Torrey and Gad Alone of AIC, David Brussel from the Manufacturing Leadership Council, and of course, Lawrence McHauser from McKinsey. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you to our panelists, and just hope you all have a great day. Take care now.